All right, let's get rolling here. My name is Kyle Gears, and I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at YCharts. I cover our relationships with asset management firms. Today, we're covering how wholesalers are leveraging YCharts to create opportunity through volatility. The idea behind today's session is not only to demonstrate the capabilities, but to also show you that the messaging can be communicated in a virtual way. YCharts can be used to significantly improve the quality of virtual or screen share meetings with your clients. For those that don't currently have access to YCharts, now is a great time to get started, given travel has been tabled for a while, and there's a good chance there may be some additional room in the T&E budget as well. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them on the left-hand side of your screen. Please keep in mind that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, a recording of the webinar will be sent to all attendees. Now, let's get started. Today's agenda, we're going to cover three key areas: making the most of your dashboard during these volatile times. We'll look at timely use cases that pull in things that are relevant in conversations right now due to market volatility. And then we'll also cover a couple new data points and features that we've added throughout the platform to help you navigate the volatility and communicate that to your clients. We'll go ahead and jump into the platform. And the first area that we're going to start out is the dashboard. And the dashboard should definitely not be neglected. This is something that's going to help prepare you for the day and keep a pulse on what's happening in the market. So the last thing you want to have is a blank dashboard. If that's the case, please reach out to me so we can help you get set up. But this is just a quick idea and overview on how a dashboard should look in terms of best practices or a fully set up dashboard. So what I have on the left-hand side here are my watch list. And outside of your normal watch list that contain your funds as well as your competitors, it might be helpful to set some stuff up that tracks certain things within the market, such as equity styles I have here. Basically some ETFs that meet criteria for certain market cap and styles based on Morningstar's categorization, just to see what's moving, what's doing well, what isn't. I'm a fan of using ETFs here because we have extended data on ETFs opposed to indices, and we also get more ticks throughout the day. So being able to cover what's going on intraday is extremely helpful. I also have a fixed income watch list to track some major fixed income ETFs or things that are pretty widely used, as well as sectors, just to, once again, keep tabs on what's moving in certain areas. And within those watch lists, you have the overview tab that covers the change on the 1 day as well as the percent change, but you also have the data tab. So make sure you're getting some good use out of that, because that's going to allow you 6 columns that you can even customize based on exactly what you want to see. What's most pertinent to you? I mean, what's going to be the key information that you want to see for these watch lists? And you can also swap out those columns, as I mentioned, so it's fully customizable. If we don't really care about fund flows right now, we can remove that and replace that with something else. Maybe we want to replace it with a max drawdown given the current state of the market, see what's holding up. So I go to options and add metric to data view and simply type search for drawdown, and I can pull that in and slot that in to see where everything is stacking up there. You also have on the right-hand side the ability to create charts. So here I'm just tracking some asset classes as well as spreads. Spreads are a hot topic right now. You see a lot of spreads blowing out versus treasuries, even corporates. So we have a corporate spread, high yield spread in the 10-year to 3-month, and then we also have treasury rates. So just to give you a quick idea on how I created these charts, if you'd like to recreate them on your dashboard, I'll just jump in and open the edit so you can see exactly what I did. Basically chose the ETFs that I want to track, and I used price as my financial metric to track those intraday moves. And I also normalized the data, so it's taking the percent change of the price opposed to just showing me the price. So everything's on an apples to apples comparison, or you see the performance on the day or on the time frame that you have selected. As for the spreads, here's how that looks. You'll basically search those which are labeled as economic indicators, and you can use the type search to easily find them. You aren't required to input a financial metric because it's only one single data series, whereas if we're using ETFs, you can have price, you can have total return price, you can pull in the yield. There's multiple financial metrics tied to that data point, whereas the econ data or the indicators, it's strictly one series, so you don't have to define a financial metric. And we don't want to check the normalized box here because that's going to show us the percent change of the spread. We want to keep it unchecked to show us the actual spread in its original value or format. And last but not least, the Treasury rates. Very similar to the spreads. We're simply just type searching for those here, and we're not choosing that normalize option. And nor do we have to choose a financial metric since it's just one series of that data. So that covers this ETFs and funds tab that I have created, but you'll also notice I'm taking advantage of all 4 tabs that I'm allowed. In another tab, I have economic data. So right now, you're going to have some key indicators that you want to track or you want to follow based on what's going on in the markets and in the world in general. So you see that I have some popular economic metrics up top. I have coronavirus tracking as well. Our team worked really hard to get the Johns Hopkins coronavirus data into the platform within the last week. So we're now tracking all of that information, so world deaths and cases as well as each country, and then also cases per day. So this information can be used throughout the platform. It can be charted, it can be visualized, so it can really help communicate the impact of the coronavirus on the market. On the right-hand side, just have a commodities chart, just tracking, gold and crude, obviously 2 other topics of discussion that you're constantly seeing brought up in the news. Being able to track the performance year to date, oil taking a huge dive, gold pretty interesting with all the volatility. Another example of ways that you can just get that on your dashboard to visualize that and have some knowledge of what's going on there. Next, we'll jump into the fundamental charting tool, and the chart's going to be a great way to visualize or communicate everything that's happening in the markets right now. And first and foremost, I just want to cover something very simple yet extremely effective, and that's using the custom date range. So starting off in the chart, I'm just going to add a couple tickers in to the security search box. And you should be looking at a normalized data format, which shows you the performance. So I add a mutual fund that's going to provide me with total return price forward adjusted as my default metric. And then I'll also go ahead and toss in the SPY ETF. So once I do that, you know that it's duplicated in a sense. So you see that you have 4 lines, and that's because the default metric is price for that ETF. So mutual funds default to total return, ETFs default to price because most of the time you might want to see that one day or the intraday move. So all we need to do here is simply remove price, and now we have cleaned up that view. So we're looking at dividends and distributions reinvested, net of fees for that total return. So the first example is going to be using our date range to customize a specific period, and we can use the example of when the coronavirus crisis really hit, which was around mid-February. So if I flip my year to 2020, jump back to February, it's around the 19th when the market started selling off. So we can use that as our starting point and show how our fund is performed versus a competitor or versus the market overall. To really, communicate that, especially if we have some solid downside protection. Speaking of downside protection, there's another data format that is extremely useful during these times as we're, hitting new lows and we're seeing larger drawdowns. that's going to be percent off high. And that's going to be included under the data format section as well. So we start out with normalized or percent change to show the return, but we can easily change that to percent off high in order to show exactly that, drawdowns over specific periods. And it's not going to tell us a whole lot over the shorter period, but if we move that to a longer period, such as a 1 year, that'll kind of give us a better story there. So the way to read this would be, you have the baseline of 0 up near the top of the chart here. Every time you see the value of 0 hit, that's a new high for that fund. Every time it comes off that high, you see the drawdown as well as the recovery. So this can be very impactful when you're showing your fund versus a competitor versus the overall market or index. It allows you to understand how bad the drawdown was, how long it took to recover, and so on. You can even use our annotate function to pinpoint that data. So if I want to know exactly, what that max drawdown was, I can hop over to my annotate tab in the upper left-hand corner, open up my annotation options by clicking the plus sign, and I can basically define the minimum value on the chart for each of these tickers. So go ahead and check the box next to min line, click add, and you'll see it actually pinpoints that max drawdown and when it occurred. We'll do the same for SPY. Next, we'll talk about looking at coronavirus data. And let me go ahead and just reset everything that we have done there, and we'll start with a blank slate. So to find the coronavirus data, it's actually pretty simple. You can literally just type coronavirus in the security search box, and it'll give you a full list of hits. And if you want to lock in on any specific country, let's say we want to stick with the US, type in space US or space China, space Italy, you'll be able to easily filter that list down. So if we want to look at something like the cases or deaths, we can input that on the chart. You can also overlay performance of an index, performance of a fund, or just the levels of the index. So one simple use case would be, well, let's take a look at the S&P. I'm going to pull the actual index here, to see exactly how that looks as those cases rose in the US. And once again, you can choose that custom start date. Maybe we want to start end of January or Feb 1st, just so we don't have any blank data on the beginning of the chart. And we can see how the index reacted to that data, or how it might have had an impact on the index and the moves. Keep in mind, everything that you're creating here can be saved. So if you click the new fundamental chart dropdown in the upper left-hand corner, save as, you can name this and save it down so it's stored for next time. You don't have to rebuild it. You can also share it with your colleagues. So if you created a compelling sales idea, you can click the share option in the upper right-hand corner, share with team, and get that out to everybody else at your firm. Now, the last example that we'll take a look at within charts is going to be related to fixed income and spreads. So once again, hot topic of discussion, a lot of crazy things happening in the bond market. We want to be able to communicate that to clients, whether that's looking for opportunities or sort of talking them off the ledge if they were hit hard during the sell-off. And the two data points that we're going to take a look at are the corporate master option adjusted spread and the high yield master option adjusted spread. And it's very simple to find these within the platform. Once again, we can sort of lean on the type search. So if I go to the security search box, and I literally just type in corp space spread, we'll see a full list of results. And the most common is going to be the corporate master. This is coming from ICE, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and it's taking an aggregate of investment grade corporate securities and taking that versus the treasuries, basket of treasuries. And this information can be found on Fred's website as well, so it gives you some more detail. You could jump to it from the platform through Merrill's site, or if you Google Corporate Master option adjusted spread, if you need the actual details, that's an easy way to access them. You also notice we have the credit quality specific spreads as well, if those might be of interest to you. But we'll go with the Corporate Master here, and then we'll also add the High Yield Master. So if I just type in High Yield Spread, you'll see the High Yield Master too. So once those are on there, it tells us the story, if spread's blowing out. We can also change the time frame on that and take a look at the last time, they blew out, and figure out, what happened, how long did it take for those to kind of come back down to earth. And you can, even max it out and look at how things occurred in 08, and you can use your chart options dropdown to identify those recessionary periods fairly easily, just to get an idea of historically how they moved or how they reacted. So this is great from a macro level to have this conversation with clients, but you can also take it a step further. You can also add one of your funds as well as a competitor to this chart if you want to really talk about the impact and the recovery. So you can jump back to that security search box, and I'm just going to use, for the example, just use HYG, and I'll toss that on there to show the move. First and foremost, we'll want to change the data format to normalized. And now the spreads are a bit out of whack because we're seeing the percent change of the spread as well as the performance of the fund. That's where our annotate button comes in again. So if we go to annotate, you can actually force those to the original format. So we can basically say, hey, I don't want to see this in the percent change. I want to see it in its original value. So we can force the original, flip that on. Same deal for high yield. And now that's going to make a lot more sense to us. So we can see where the spread spikes, and we can see the reaction or the recovery of the security that we've added to the chart. All right, moving on. The next item that we'll discuss is going to be the fund screener, and looking for funds that might not have held up all that well with the volatility. So that could mean, opportunity for us, or that could mean, let's get a lay of the land and kind of figure things out. So for that, we'll go to the Tools section and Fund Screener. And our starting point is usually going to be modifying our fund universe. And the Modify button is going to allow us to drill down into specific categories. So I click on Modify, and if we want to stick with just mutual funds, we can also do that by choosing the type category, open-ended fund and mutual fund. So maybe we want to get rid of ETFs and UITs and closed ends. And then we can go down to category name, US fund categories. And since we're just taking a look at high yield, let's go ahead and stick with that example. And we'll click submit. And now we're looking at every fund in the high yield space, 683 funds. We see a couple dupe share classes, but what we can do is we can remove duplicates in the upper right-hand corner. And that's going to do away with the smaller share classes and provide us with the share class that has the largest AUM, which is going to be the institutional majority of the time, but we can always swap those out later. It's just sort of a high-level, research and discovery phase. So once we have that list, we can just go to add metric columns. And let's say we want to take a look at the last 1 month and see what got hit the hardest. And I'm going to use price return here rather than total return. Total return obviously includes the dividends and distributions, but I'm going to stick with price, which is basically just the NAV, or the value of the underlying assets, just because it's a shorter time frame and we really want to get a good read on how those funds have reacted. So I'll go ahead and submit that, and then I can sort by ascending and descending order to figure out, who got hit the hardest. Do we want to go out and target any of those funds, or, is this a tax loss harvesting opportunity for any of our clients? Can we help them out there? So the fund screener is a great way to kind of dig into things and help generate ideas on the sales side of things, or even just further your knowledge or build your intelligence on what's going on out there in certain categories. Once you've done this, you can actually save it down if it's helpful. You can always come back to it. You can edit the screen. So a lot of flexibility here, and very wide range of knowledge that can be built through the fund screener. Next, we'll talk about some of the newer functionality that we've created that's going to help you build out use cases and or sales ideas in less than half the time you normally would than doing it on your own. That's going to be a function called Quickflows, and you'll notice Quickflows on the right side of all of the newly designed pages. It sticks out as a little tab, and then it opens up the Quickflow module. And there's two versions of Quickflows. There's a single Quickflow where you can enter one fund in and pull in data to build out use cases for that. And you also have a comparison Quickflow where you can enter up to 12 funds to compare on the fly in one shot. Let's start out with the single Quickflow, and we'll just use the example that I leveraged earlier, the Vanguard Total Stock Market mutual fund, and we've entered that in. We can see all the different options we have. So we can pull in performance of calendar year returns. We can pull in drawdowns versus the benchmark, returns versus the market. We could find similar securities. And then we also have these economic impact Quickflows built out. There's one that we already have for the coronavirus crisis. So the idea is you click on the Quickflow, that brings you directly into the page with that sales idea or use case already fully built out for you. So here we're just looking at the impact the coronavirus has had on major indices as well as the fund or the ETF that you had selected. But once you build this out, or once you click on the Quickflow, you can actually edit it. You can remove things, you can add things, you can save it down as your own, you can change the time frame. So a lot of flexibility there once this is built out after you click the Quickflow. And the beauty of it is you have it saved. So anytime you enter in data, you'll have that saved based on the last entry. So you can jump back and you continue to look at different Quickflows without having to re-enter any of that data. So if we jump over to the comparison Quickflow, something like the recession chart is pretty interesting. It actually pinpoints the exact time frames for the last recession to show you how your fund is held up versus a competitor or versus an index throughout that period. And then you can jump back and you can kind of go through the list here, and you can build out a full conversation or full out workflow through the Quickflow options. So you can pull in something like equity style exposure, fundamentals, risk, sector exposure. So I click on equity style, for example. And it's going to give me all of our Morningstar style boxes. I'm going to click this little double arrow next to metrics just to sort of collapse that, get rid of some of the noise. And we can see, how that sort of breaks down versus anything else we're comparing against. And once again, you can just jump right back to Quickflows and select other Quickflows to pull the same securities in. So we can go to annual returns, for example, in the time series table. So we can go back and look at every single calendar year and what the return was for those securities. So if we want to jump back and look at 08 or 09, we click next here, we get the next series of dates or years. We see how we held up in 08, how the recovery was in 09, and so on. So that can be extremely helpful as well. And last but not least, we also released PDF reports for fund comparisons. So previously we had these for model portfolios, but it took a little bit of work to kind of fine tune them for individual funds. We also fully redesigned our fund quote page. So the way to reach the quote page would be either, for one, clicking on the ticker, which will open that up, or you can just jump to the type search for the fund you're looking for, select it, and that's going to bring you into the newly designed quote page. So you see it's more modern. We also added a couple additional modules here, but so we kind of scroll down, you have the ability to show performance versus a benchmark. It's always going to be a broad asset class benchmark. You can change that in individual use cases or examples as you're building them out in the chart. This is just sort of a high level, kind of default module on each page. Something that's new is the fund flow module, which shows you the fund flows for all of the respective timeframes. And then you see exactly where flows were versus the category and what the rank in the category was for the flow. So you see the category low, category high, here's where we sit versus the category and flows. And then as you scroll down a little ways, you have the performance versus the category, as well as some return modules. But what I really want to get into is the ability to run reports. So, previously, if you ever had to reach out to the home office or internally for a comparison report, with YCharts, you no longer have to do that because you have access to run your own. You'll see the report button in the upper right-hand corner of that quote page. So we can click on that, and that's going to give you a wide range of reports that are all described based on what they actually do. The side-by-sides are the comparison reports, so that allows you to enter in another fund or ETF for a direct comparison. And my favorite's the side-by-side comprehensive report. I choose no benchmark just because the benchmark creates a little bit of noise. You really just want to stack up versus that competitor. So that's what I'm going to go with here. I'll click next. It's going to ask me what I want to compare against. And we'll just use the example of SPY again. Click next there, and it asks you for some information because it creates a really nice cover page. This can also be branded with your firm's logo and firm's colors. So if marketing has a color palette or color codes they can send over, we can fully deck this out for you. Always happy to do that. And we can also add a custom disclosure if you don't have that already uploaded. I'll just enter in test there, but you can enter your name, the advisor's name, which would go in that line, your information as far as your phone number and your fund's website, and then generate. And that's going to kick out a nice PDF report for us within seconds. We open that PDF report up. There's our cover page. The logo would go in the upper left-hand corner. I don't have a sample on this report, but then as we scroll down, you have performance figures. You have growth of 10K over the last 10 years, periodic returns, annual returns. You see there's a little kind of sample logo in the upper right-hand corner there, which is where the logo would apply. Then we'll move on down and look at things like asset allocation, geographic exposure, style exposure, market cap. So it gives you a great breakdown of, where your fund stacks up versus whatever you're comparing it against. We have stock sector. And as we scroll down, bond data, if that applies, you can always strip that out as well. And then you'll have top 10 holdings, risk info, fundamentals, and then finally definitions as well as a disclosure page. So the custom disclosure will apply on the last page of the report, and we can work with compliance to apply that if it hasn't already been done. And that just wraps up the demonstration portion today. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you can apply what we covered today to your conversations, or even if you're using YCharts throughout meetings with advisors or virtual meetings. Anything I can help with, please feel free to reach out to me on. You can contact me at kyle@ycharts.com for any additional questions or any needs. Current clients, feel free to reach out to set some time up to cover what we discussed. But hope everybody is staying safe out there, staying healthy, and navigating these times of volatility to their advantage. Talk to everybody soon, and thank you for joining.